Burkina Faso has recently seen a great deal of political and social instability. The young military leader, Captain Ibrahim Traore, who took over following a coup in September 2022, is at the center of these events. There are concerns about potential instability in the region following the military takeover and Traore's recent suspension of news outlets in the country. There are recent tensions, too, between Traore and Ivory Coast. So, in today's video, we will be looking at why Burkina Faso is accusing its neighbor Ivory Coast of hosting destabilizers. We will also be telling you why more news outlets have been suspended. But before we continue, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the new tourist channel to get updates on all that is going on in Burkina Faso. Late last month, the head of Burkina Faso's military regime, Ibrahim Traore, accused Ivory Coast of welcoming all the destabilizers of his country, adding that there was a problem with the authorities in Abidjan. The two countries' defense ministers met on the border on April 19 in an attempt to create a new start in their relationship because of the recent turbulence in their relations. In an interview with a national radio outlet, Traore cited Ivory Coast, saying, "All the destabilizers are there and they aren't hiding." Regarding Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara, Traore said he had no special contacts with him. Traore mentioned that he was first in contact with the Ivorian president and thought things could work between them, but this was not the case. Talking about the border meeting between the two defense chiefs, Traore said the meeting went well and the ball was in their court. Friction has occasionally arisen in the relations between Ivory Coast and Burkina Faso, a country beset by insurgent group violence. A civilian official and a Burkinabe soldier were taken into custody in the northern region of Ivory Coast at the end of March. In addition, two Ivorian police officers were taken into custody at an unauthorized gold mining location in Burkina Faso last September. Negotiations are still in progress regarding the release of Burkinabe and Ivorians detained in both nations. As all this is going on, Burkina Faso has suspended several international news organizations, some of them for an indefinite period. Burkina Faso suspended the BBC and Voice of America radio stations for their coverage of a report by Human Rights Watch on a mass termination of civilians carried out by the country's armed forces. Human Rights Watch said that the army had terminated over 223 people in areas where there were allegations of collaboration with militants, 56 of whom were minors. However, the Voice of America said it stands by its reporting about Burkina Faso and intends to continue to fully and fairly cover activities in the country. They have asked the government of Burkina Faso to reconsider this troubling decision. If Voice of America continues to report on news about Burkina Faso, it will likely face further suspension or restrictions from the Burkinabe authorities. The suspension reduces the BBC ability to reach audiences with independent and accurate news, but they have said they will continue to report on the region in the public interest and without fear or favor. The authorities have also ordered internet service providers to suspend access to the websites and digital platforms of Voice of America, the BBC, and Human Rights Watch within Burkina Faso. This suspension is not an isolated incident, as Burkinabe authorities have previously suspended French TV outlets and radio stations and expelled correspondents from French newspapers. Burkina Faso leaders have suspended more media outlets in the following days, some of which include French newspaper Le Monde, British publication The Guardian, German broadcaster Deutsche Welle, and French broadcaster TV5 Monde. The Human Rights Watch described these terminations as one of the worst army abuses in Burkina Faso since 2015. The media campaign orchestrated around these accusations fully shows the unavowed intention to discredit their fighting forces. Some people think that in addition to the challenges of reporting on the country's insecurity, Burkina Faso's journalists shouldn't have to cope with official censorship. The suspensions, according to Sadibou Merong, head of Reporters Without Borders Sub-Saharan Africa Bureau, are another blow to press freedom in Burkina Faso. Take note that Burkina Faso's authorities have dismissed a report by Human Rights Watch that accused the army of abuses against civilians. As earlier mentioned, on February 25th, in the Thiou district of northern Natinga province, 223 civilians, at least 56 of them children, were terminated by Burkina Faso's military in what appeared to be a widespread campaign against civilians who were suspected of working with armed groups. The government spokesperson Jazang Emmanuel Ouedraogo said in a statement on Saturday that the goal of these baseless charges, which the Burkina Faso government denied and forcefully denounced, was to undermine the combat troops that risk their lives to secure the region and defend the people and their property against terrorist attacks. According to Ouedraogo, the security and defense forces cannot be the perpetrators of heinous crimes like those allegedly committed against the same populations, since they constantly risk their lives to aid and relieve the civilian population in areas where there are security concerns. Bear in mind that Burkina Faso and other West African nations in the Sahel, like Niger and Mali, are battling Islamist insurgencies. In 2022, the government was overthrown by the military in a coup because the administration was unable to put an end to a jihadist insurgency that had started in 2015. 2 million people have fled their homes, and thousands of civilians, soldiers, and police have lost their lives. The West African nation was previously commended for leading the region in journalistic freedom. Some people now think that isn't the case. Some are in favor of the suspension. Some of these news channels, in their opinion, report more than they should. Note that this suspension falls in place before May 3, World Press Freedom Day, as reported by Voice of America on one of their news sites. All of this is taking place at the same time that 3 French ambassadors have been expelled from Burkina Faso by military commanders who accuse them of engaging in subversive activities. This is the most recent indication of the two countries' deteriorating relations. Due to Burkina Faso's shift toward Russia, his close ties to the former colonial power, France, have collapsed. Details of the charges levied against them were omitted. The notion that social media firms have complete control over their domain ignores a lot of things, such as how big that domain is, how hard it is to distinguish fact from fiction, how important unfettered free expression is in democracies, how often algorithmic model errors occur, and more. Moreover, news organizations aren't designed to serve as a stronghold against the spread of misleading information. Although they act as gatekeepers, news organizations cannot impose morals on their audience. If they did, the public's trust in the media would sharply deteriorate and charges of bias in the media would get more serious. However, news organizations don't always have to be the finest disseminators. The suspension of Voice of America and the BBC raises questions about press and information freedom in Burkina Faso. Maintaining the principles of free speech and the public's right to unbiased news is essential, even though the administration claims that the suspension is necessary to protect national security. In an era where information is essential for shaping public opinion and holding the powerful to account, governments need to foster an environment that encourages free speech and information exchange. The leaders of Burkina Faso have several options for ensuring that media outlets there use greater prudence. To guarantee that media regulations are just, open, and compliant with global norms, the government ought to examine and revise them. The Superior Council for Communication, which regulates media operations, should act independently and provide advance notice for its decisions. All final decisions should be subject to appeal before competent courts. Only then will things become better. As for the accusations made by Burkina Faso to Ivory Coast, we cannot give a clear answer now if these allegations are valid. But for a fact, the leaders of Burkina Faso are not placing a complaint for nothing. The already shaky relationship between the two nations could be further strained by these accusations, which could also have broader effects on regional stability. The assertions made by Burkina Faso are a result of its continuous battle with issues related to internal security, such as armed organizations and terrorist operations occurring within its borders. These problems have plagued the nation for years, taking a heavy toll on lives and forcing many of its residents to flee. To combat the security concerns it faces, Burkina Faso has been aggressively requesting assistance from its neighbors and the global community. To overcome the security concerns that both Burkina Faso and Ivory Coast face, regional collaboration and dialogue are essential. To improve border security and intelligence sharing, as well as to combat terrorism and extremism, a united front is required. Instead of turning to charges that could sour ties, both nations must have a positive discourse to resolve any issues and grievances. In addition, the international community ought to actively assist Ivory Coast and Burkina Faso in their endeavors to preserve security and stability. This can be accomplished by working together to address the underlying causes of the region's instability, providing more technical and financial support, and developing capacity. It is only through collective efforts that lasting peace and security can be achieved in the West African region. How do you think Ivory Coast is going to react to all this? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the new tourist channel. Turn on notifications too so you get notified whenever we upload videos like this. Thanks for watching and see you in our next video.